and then the Uganda National Teachers Union, 2 unions from Rwanda, one for public sector, SNED, the other one is for private sector, SNEDIC, and then the other one is STABE from Burundi. These are the unions that actually have formed the federation. We look forward to having more unions as countries join East African community. We look forward to having a union from South Sudan. We have already started discussions. We look forward to having a teachers union from Congo DRC. We have started discussions. And this recently, you are very much aware that Somalia has been also admitted into East African community. Therefore, we look forward again having a union joining us as IQEC grows. The federation, brief information about the federation, is a labor union, like any other labor union. However, it's a union of professionals. Therefore, it stands on 2 pillars. The core business is that of labor matters, welfare of teachers. And then, because of professionalism, the other pillar is about advocating for quality information. Whereas we stand on this other about welfare, decent employment of teachers in the region. The other part is about addressing good policies of education, curriculum, syllabuses, whatever in the region. And because the second pillar, mainly, though the first pillar also has a part in this one, we decided to conduct a study on the effectiveness of adoption and implementation of the competence-based curriculum in primary and secondary schools in East Africa. Why do we conduct this study? There have been complaints from teachers, the teaching fraternity, about the whole process and implementation of the competence-based curriculum. Then from the complaints, we said, no, we have to conduct a study. So we hired a team of 2 dons from Catholic University of East Africa. Professor Paul Ogula is not with us, and his student and colleague, Dr. Pascal Wambia. These are the ones who conducted. We outsourced them, we conducted the study. And having submitted the report in October, where TENMET participated and the other non-state actors engaged in the education sector in the region took part. We were encouraged to take part in this conference, and we are very grateful to TENMET for inviting us, so we take part. And for that reason, we're in position to present the report. It is a desk study report. So that's why Pascal is there. But again, we have kaka yangu, Mzee Enea Muhando. He's there. I did not take part in the study. However, when we were presenting the study to the Executive Council and the other stakeholders in October, because of what we knew of him about what he had done together with his colleague for the Sub-Saharan Africa about CBC, we were really motivated to have him with us there to share with us what he heard about competence-based curriculum. And we came up with an understanding that he has rich information about perspectives, philosophical perspectives and practical perspectives of the competence-based curriculum. So we invited him to bring with him a paper that will come before the report. That's why he's here with us. And now, as a moderator, I take this opportunity now to invite first Mzee Enea Muhando to take us through his presentation. Karibu.
Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Habari za asubuhi. Yeah, I'm glad to be here to tell you what he wanted to tell you about my presentation. What I have here is a summation of a common understanding that we established at Arusha when the desk review was being presented. Last year, we had the opportunity, Dr. Fika Makabongo and I had the opportunity to conduct an online discussion of 18 sub-Saharan countries on adoption and implementation of CBC, competence-based curriculum. And in that discussion, we found that there is a big divergence of thinking about CBC in the sub-Saharan region. And this became very interesting because when I was listening here yesterday, I was also coming to that point of saying, okay, maybe we need to have a discussion that brings us together to find out exactly what do we mean by CBC. And do we take CBC like I'm a Christian, like the Lord's Prayer, something that is prescribed to us? Or do we contextualize it and see CBC as something that can be subjected to our condition in the sub-Saharan region, for that matter, in the East African region? But here we can talk about sub-Sahara because we are people from Senegal. Yeah, they tell me that the time has been constrained a little bit, so we are going to shorten. Now, that being the case, and I see I'm blessed because we are not using PowerPoint. Now I just speak from my head. I'll emphasize on three particular areas. Number one is the meaning of CBC. What does it mean to us? If you look through literature, you find it being described. Sometimes people go back to Dakam. In 1967 in Canada, Ontario State, entrepreneurs and academic dons met to discuss the question of why don't these graduates perform? Why can't they perform? Then they came up with a framework they called DACAM, developing a curriculum. In that one, they came up with an idea of what we call outcomes. You have big outcome there, and then down there you have, this principal outcome, and then enabling outcome, and then sub-enabling outcome, and then you have related tasks. The thing looks very mechanical because it is too functional and too industrially oriented. People found it was a good idea, but then how do we follow it if you are teaching standard 3? Then many people came up with the other adoptions that maybe what is most important here is application, to develop what we call applied competence, something that people can live with. And for that matter, there came up the idea of experiential learning. People went back again to the 1930s when we had John Dewey with the Tennessee Valley Authority. And I say, students should learn what they can live. Learning by doing, if you go back to John Dewey. And this was a glorified idea in the sense that people came up with the frameworks like ERGA, which is experience, and then reflection, generalization, and then application. And then people came up again with the ideas like Kolb, David Kolb, he came up with the idea of having concrete experience, and then reflective observation, and then abstract conceptualization, and then active experimentation. So you can see these frameworks, which lead people to living what they are learning in the classroom. And you go back to John Dewey again, you say, it is learning by doing. And then ideas came again, people came up with the idea of service learning. Service learning is something like attachment. People here talked about being attached, children being attached. It's not a new idea in the world, because in Canada, in Cuba, in the 1960s, children were assigned to sugar plantations. Everyone would have a hectare. If you are teaching osmosis, children would relate from their given or assigned hectare and see how does osmosis happen there. If you are teaching soil erosion, the same. If you are teaching maybe a history, they go, yeah, people who live here and whatever, how does it relate? So you find that what we're trying to do here right now is relating life to learning. Relating life to learning. But I don't want to favor Tanzania. We had a saint, but we became culprits. Nyerere gave us education for self-reliance. It's a very glorified philosophy. Education for self-reliance is a glorified philosophy in the sense that it deals with developing a person. Nyerere alikuwa anasema, I'm sorry, I'll use Kiswahili. Ujamaa ni utu. Ujamani utu. Which means education for self-reliance was about developing people. People with character. People with social character. People with glorified stature. This is very important. We have one lady, a Swedish lady, Professor Carlgren, Ingrid Carlgren. She talks about education creating people, talking about a paradigm that shifts us from reflected objects, content, to reflective subjects, people who can reflect. I've been listening very carefully for the 3 days we've been here. People are still talking about things. People are not talking about people. We've been talking about this postmodern era, you call it the fourth industrial revolution, and we are still very industrial. We're talking about industries, about objects, but we're not talking about the person. What kind of person do we develop? tunaunda mtu wa namna gani? Somebody who can stand up and you say, yeah, this man has gone to school. Yeah. Because the way I look at him, he's a product of a changed education. We're just talking about responding to machines. It's very dangerous, my friend. When you talk about artificial intelligence, we're still subjected to machines. And here people were just talking as if we are to adapt ourselves to those machines. Artificial intelligence is very tricky because it makes machines that think faster and more correctly, if I mean, than the human mind. But unfortunately for those machines, they are still made by man and regulated by man. Now, do we make that man who can make that machine, and many of them who will regulate those machines? Or are we going to produce people who will be slaves to those machines, and then they won't think again? It is unfortunate that here we are talking about the condition of alienation, the human being being alienated. If education is not taken care of, if you don't produce people who can stand up and change the world, rather than people who are going to be changed by the world, we are in danger. I was listening here yesterday and the day before. People were talking about people are going to be changed by the world. People are going to be changed by we have to adjust it to the machines. We have to adjust it to this. You'll be slaves. So competence means making people with the muscle to sustain the forces of the 21st century. Hiyo ndio kazi. Sasa nijiulize, narudi kwenye Kiswahili, nijiulize, when you talk about the 21st century, what do you mean? People talk about globalization. You're talking about globalization. Maybe you are gobbled. You're not globalized, you are gobbled. People ask themselves, 21st century, globalization, fourth industrial revolution, are we there? Okay, maybe you are there, but you are in somebody's stomach. You could be there, but you are sitting, you've been swallowed. You are sitting in somebody's stomach. It's not you who is there. Somebody is there with you in his stomach. Are you there? Are you in the 21st century? I went to university in the 1960s. I'm very old. Before many of you were born. I graduated in 1970. I should have graduated in 1969, but we were sent down in 1966. So we had to lose a year. Nyerere used to visit the University of Dar es Salaam. And Nyerere talked about these paradigms. Those times we were talking about Marxism and anti-Marxism. And one time, in 1969, the revolutionaries, the fire-breathing Marxists, asked him, Mwalimu, when will you be clear about your socialism? Because it doesn't sound scientific. Nyerere said, it's very interesting. You must have read Karl Marx upside down. Yeah. Because when he wrote his work, he was not looking at world history. He was looking at the European experience, which had slaves, feudalism, and then capitalism. With us, we don't have all that gamut. No. We have a different experience. And he wants us to wait until we reach capitalism in order to take socialism. That's a paradigm. He said, if Karl Marx came here today and I gave him my people, some of them who are still, he would write a different Das Kapital. Sijui mmeshasoma Das Kapital? Kapitali ya Marx. New generation, you're not exposed to that kind of thinking. But he was saying that when you receive these paradigms, you have to contextualize them. Nyerere said, my socialism is not like Karl Marx. My socialism is about justice. Justice in the distribution of services. When we talk about CBC, we have to think of what kind of person do we want to make? What kind of profile can we establish so that somebody sees him and says, okay, this is a person who can perform. This is a person who can live what he learned. This is a person with a social character. Somebody who can stand up in the world. Somebody who can rewrite history, world history, record history, and define himself in speculating for human destiny. This is what CBC could mean to us. We had to establish at Arusha, we had to establish a common understanding as to how Africans would look at CBC. And not just going to outcome, sub-enabling outcome, that might not make good meaning to us. What we're talking is about a person who can live today, a person who can take the shocks of the 21st century. The 21st century is complicated in the sense that it is defined by a lot of things that move very fast. Money moving very fast. Images moving very fast. A lot of dissipation. A lot of recursion. A lot of incursion. And actually it is something that is defined in physics and mathematics by the theory of complexity, chaos and complexity. If you simplify it to say organized chaos, it is a century of organized chaos. How do we make people who can live in this organized chaos? That is CBC. How? Na mnazungumza kwamba now we are in the 21st century. Are you sure you're there? And if you are there, you must be in somebody's pocket or in somebody's stomach. Are you there? Now, one sentence, maybe to finish, takes me to CBC and how it can be taught. How do we teach? When conducting the East African thing, the Sub-Saharan thing, we came across a framework of a lesson plan that exposes children to concrete experience. Wanaanza kuandika. And then they come to explore. And after exploration, they come to explain what they have explored in their own words. And then they put it into practice. And when they put it into practice, then it becomes a lived experience. So that whatever is taught in class, it could be history or whatever, it has to be experienced. They internalize they experience it, and then they evaluate. To have people like those, we create something we call rigor. Rigor is a muscle, ujasiri in Kiswahili we say. People who have the muscle, stern muscle, to stand up and do things, to stand up and define oneself. And if you don't do that, you'll be a nation of weaklings or a region of weaklings. We need people who can speak in the words of Reginald Mengi had written a book which was very interesting. The title was I Can, I Will, I Must. I can, I will, I must. That is rigor. Not failing, and never to fail. So our education has to be organized in the sense that it can produce people with that kind of muscle. Instead of organizing the domains from knowledge, skills, and attitude, then you reverse. You start with attitude, skills, and then knowledge. Attitude. Ladies and gentlemen, our time is constrained, and I think I'll have to stop there, knowing that you might be able to ask us questions, but I have to leave this word with you, that Africa is in danger. Africa is in danger because we have this person called Tony Blair. He said, the world should not let Africa remain as a scar on human conscience. Mwingereza huyo, former British Prime Minister, telling the world that you should not let Africa remain as a scar on human conscience. We are not there. In the 1970s, late 1970s, a black American professor, Ishmael Reed, wrote a novel entitled Brothers and Keepers. Brothers and Keepers. That if God came back today and asked the world, where is your brother? You remember Kaini? He was asked, where is brother? And he had the audacity to tell God, am I my brother's keeper? Then we have people who would be people with the audacity to tell God, who is my brother anyway? When they ask, where are your Africans? They say, we don't even know them. They are not even ours. So we are even if you are there, maybe we should check ourselves. But finally, we can stand up and define ourselves. China, at the time of Mao, China was in a position like where we are today. People saying it's too big a population. How are they going to feed them? Whatever. And Mao said, we shall change. And they've changed. Now they're leading the world. Thank you very much. Asante.
Brother Muhando, thank you very much for that word of prayer. It's unfortunate that the machine has really failed us. Otherwise, we have the notes, the presentations, in terms of, but then we cannot have access to them. And even the readings, the list of readings, a long one, which is referred, cannot be available. But I think we can share them.
We'll have them in the application. we'll share them on the application.
Okay, thank you. Now, can I invite you,
Yes.
Dr. Pasco? Can you please take your floor?
Thank you. Good morning, colleagues. Yeah, I'm a teacher, so as a teacher, I ask questions before I start my lessons. So I want to pose a question. I have only 10 minutes because we were told to stop at 10, and I will stop before 10, maybe 5 minutes before 10. Now, one question. Why does the government give free primary education? Can somebody answer me that question? Just as, why does the government give free primary education? Is it because government likes your children? Why? If you don't answer, I will point at you. Okay, I will, yes, Mabal. Yes. Good. Yes.
Secondly, the government is interested in having people who will produce more so they can pay more taxes so that the government can do whatever it wants to do.
Excellent. I've
money.
given you A. The second part of your answer is the correct one. It is an investment. When government spends money on free education, it's an investment. In other words, those children are supposed to get jobs and pay the tax. So that's why I was saying that it's a tragedy that we are training our children and they are not getting jobs. That's when they don't get jobs, the parents lose, the country loses. So you please look at it that way, that it is an investment. It's not free. And I think those in government must know that if the children we are giving education are not getting employment, they are losing big time, because there's a loss of money which is being used in free education. So that's what I wanted, and I wanted to connect it with this CBC. The idea is that when I was given this contract by Fiatu, I was very excited because we are hanging on CBC to be the panacea of our problems. If CBC does not fail, does fail, then it means we have to look for another one, because we tend to like copycats, one educational paradigm after another. Now we are on CBC. What is CBC? And my colleague Ainea has struggled with that explanation. He has struggled with it. That CBC is the one who is going to make Africans survive in what is called organized chaos, which is 21st century. Now, in my presentation, which is written, so there are people who have given different definitions. So my colleague is called Njegere. We used to work with him at the Kenya Institute of Education. Now it's called Kenya Institute of Curriculum Development. And it's the equivalent of TIE, Tanzania Institute of Education. He has given a definition, and he says that CBC is a curriculum that emphasizes what learners are expected to do rather than mainly focusing on what they are expected to know. Moving from knowledge-based education to competence-based education. I tell my students when I'm teaching them, if you claim to be a teacher, you must have something that you know, you have to have something that you can do, and you must have some values which differs you from the person in the street who has not seen the inside of the university. So if I find my students people are lining in the bank, and this person jumps the queue, then I will disown him as my student, because that's not the value we taught him. Patience. Anyway, I wanted you to have that definition from Njegere, that is what emphasizes what learners are expected to do rather than what they're expected to know. Then there's another one, Borden and Masters. They have identified 6 principles of CBC. One, in focusing on outcomes, has greater work relevance, workplace relevance. Outcomes are observable. Assessment as judgment of competencies, improved skills, improved skills reorganization, and the ability to move from one skill to another. You can move from one skill to another. Now, having said that, we looked at models. They are the European model of CBC, then the American model. The European model of CBC says that competence-based curriculum must have some content and some skills. Now, in America, where this CBC had started, it was mainly for technical schools, and it was meant to find out how competent is somebody in a particular skill. So we found out that in the European countries, competence-based curriculum goes beyond the skills, and is the one that has been implemented in the 3 countries where we did this, in the 4 countries where we did the study: Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, and Kenya. Now, after doing that, now I want to go straight to the objectives of the study. We were supposed to look at the effectiveness of the implementation of CBC in this. Actually, it was supposed to be 6 countries, including Rwanda and Zanzibar. But we didn't find any data in those countries. So we concentrated in Kenya, Tanzania, and Rwanda, and Uganda. Now, the objective was first to find out the appropriateness of the CBC for East African countries, the extent to which CBC has been implemented, teachers' working conditions and how CBC has affected that, the attitudes of parents and teachers towards CBC, the extent to which CBC has improved the quality of education in East African countries, intervention that should be undertaken. Now, on the first one, now the methodology, I don't want to go in the detail, but this was a desk review. We didn't go to the field. It was a desk review, and those who are familiar with the paradigms, we have basically 2 paradigms, that is qualitative and quantitative, and then now the others are coming with mixed methods. So it was mainly qualitative and based on what we got from the research done by others, government reports, and other sources like that. And then we looked at it and interpreted what we found. So it was not, we didn't go to the field. It was desk review. Now, so on the first one, the extent to which CBC has been appropriate for schools in East Africa, for those 3 countries. Now, we found out that is CBC appropriate for these countries? So the study found out that globally education is moving from content-based curriculum to competence-based curriculum. So many studies also recommended CBC as it allows learners to acquire competence as opposed to knowledge. So therefore we said that to that extent, we recommended that it is appropriate of the lesson in some of those classes. So some were told to buy eggs because the students were supposed to make eggs in the classroom. Some were told to come with a review indicated that teaching and learning conditions of teachers are not appropriate for the implementation of CBC. There's nowhere where we were found out that there were adequate resources for teachers. Yes, actually, I'm about to finish. Now, then the other one, the extent to which CBC has improved the quality of education in the countries. Now, we did not find a study that actually told us that CBC has improved learning. I think some of you who have read what UWEZO does, and I think RTI, Research Triangle International, they do some things on literacy and numeracy, and they compare countries. But I don't think they have done a study under CBC. Because Kenya, we are now doing the 4th year. Tanzania is the one that has stayed with CBC for a long time, from 2005, if the records we read were correct. From 2005, CBC has been implemented here in Tanzania. So the working conditions of teachers needs are not commensurate to the implementation of TBT, because the resources are not enough. The teachers have not been adequately trained, and if you have not been adequately trained on this animal called CBC, how are you going to slay it or to deal with it? So that's another problem. Then we have the extent to which intervention to mitigate, what can be done to deal with these problems of CBC. So we also looked at the studies, what the studies are saying, what can be done to improve CBC. Many studies are saying, employ more teachers. And this employment of more teachers, another question I want you to answer. Why are governments reluctant to employ more teachers in Africa? Who can tell me? Is there somebody here from ActionAid? Okay. Many African countries. Yes, Mabala? Yeah, money. Yeah, Mabala is saying money. That the government does not have money to pay teachers. Yes? Excellent, I've given you A. So, in 2006, ActionAid wrote a small booklet. It's called Cancelling the Caps. I have that book on soft and I can share it with you. Now, what he found out at that time was that governments, as part of the structural adjustment programs or adjustment of the economic situation, countries were given conditions that if you are going to get money from World Bank, that's why I agree with you, you have to have a certain number of teachers and you can't improve. In Kenya, where I come from, I don't know whether we have somebody from NAT here. The last meeting we had, NAT actually said that we have 250,000 trained teachers who are not employed in Kenya. I don't know about Tanzania. In other words, and this is what pains me, we are training students, they have no jobs. We are training teachers, we can't employ teachers. And our children have poor education. So how are we, in God's name, able to develop? These are questions, and I am happy that when the government officials came here, they say that the recommendations in this workshop, they'll be willing to implement. I request that we make a very strong recommendation that all teachers who are trained in these countries should be employed, like yesterday. But we will make the recommendation. Then you people from the civil society and my colleagues from FIATU should try and put pressure that these things are implemented. Because I think it's only in Africa, I don't know other places, where teachers and doctors are being trained and they are not being employed. It's a scandal. It's a scandal, yes?
Mwalimu, swali lako ni rahisi sana. Ni
Ndio.
rahisi mno kujibiwa kwa sababu kinachosababisha wasiajiriwe ni kitu kimoja tu. Kitu kinachoitwa vipaumbele. Prioritization. Kwamba walimu wanaonekana si kipaumbele. Na ni tatizo katika nchi zetu za Kiafrika. Na unakuta wale ambao wanapewa kipaumbele, kwa mfano, mimi sio mwanasiasa lakini naongelea wanasiasa. Wanapewa pesa nyingi sana ambazo zingetumika kwenye mambo ya msingi kama kuemploy walimu na kuajiri pia madaktari huko ukiwasema. Kwa tumeshindwa kujua vipaumbele vyetu ni nini na vitu vyetu vya msingi tunavyopaswa kufanya ni vipi kwa ajili ya maendeleo ya mataifa yetu ya Afrika. Kwa maana hiyo basi, muda umefika wa kuacha kutoa elimu ya kanjanja, yani ile elimu ya kunania kubahatisha ya kufanya ili mradi kwamba tunatoa elimu bure, na hii imekuwa applied katika nchi nyingi za Kiafrika kwamba natoa elimu bure, lakini ni elimu ambayo si elimu bora kama tunavyosema quality education, sio elimu bora, na tunatoa tu kwa kisingizio kwamba hatuna hela, hatuna nini, kitu ambacho si sahihi, bali tunaweka vipaumbele katika mambo ambayo sio ya msingi katika maendeleo ya watu wa kawaida na maendeleo endelevu ya mataifa yetu. Asante.
Asante sana. So we shall discuss nikimaliza. Aya, I'm about to finish because we have only about almost 1 minute. Okay, so I think we need to employ teachers, we need to train more teachers, avail teaching and learning resources and so on. Now there are some things which I got from Rwanda, like in Rwanda, those who are admitted to go and become teachers, according to what I got from the government reports, they are people with the highest grades at the secondary school level. In most of our countries, you find that they want to admit teachers to teacher training colleges with very minimal grades. It's not right. How are you going to get somebody who's going to train a doctor who has got a D or a D+? Yeah? In other countries like Europe, teachers, you must be the best of the best to become a teacher. And it's very difficult to become a teacher, particularly teaching in a public school. So I thought that kind of thing happening in Rwanda should be emulated by the others, that those who are going to the teaching profession should be the best of the best. The government also funds the teachers circles to give teachers some money, and then teachers are eligible for scholarship after teaching for 4 or 5 years, for government scholarship to go and do either masters or bachelors if you don't have bachelors in Rwanda. These are good things. So we concluded that CBC is still appropriate despite these problems. We also concluded that teachers' conditions are not very appropriate and effective. There's no evidence that that CBC has been implemented effectively in many of these African countries that we studied. And we concluded that we cannot say that CBC has improved the quality of education in these countries. So I think I've taken enough time, and I mean too much time, because we were supposed to stop at 10 and it's 10 o'clock. So thank you very much for listening to me.
Thank you very much, Dr. Pasco, for that wonderful presentation. Unfortunately, some of the issues have not been captured in the presentation. They are there, but because of time constraint and the challenges with the automation has already turned us down in a way. But otherwise, the recommendations, for those of you who have accessed them on the screen, they include recommending that Uganda should move for adopting Kiswahili, using Swahili in schools. We have Ugandans here, I think. But others were that FEATU should actually move further for a field study rather than relying on this one, because it does not give really in-depth information. And there are other recommendations. Now, during the discussion, we'll want to hear from you, you get feedback from you. Now, questions to the panelists.
I'm
So.
thinking because your time has lapsed, we bring the other group and then we join the questions.
Okay.
Yeah?
Okay.
Okay, so have you wrapped up?
Not really. One or two questions from the from them, also from the audience.
Because I'd wanted to bring the next group and then we ask the questions together and then we break for tea.
Okay, that's okay.
Okay, so
You know, earlier we were given 1.5 hours. On to find this morning, it has been reduced by 1 hour. And you know what it means for a teacher to prepare the lesson for 1.5 hours.
Can I request you to please stand up at the front for a group picture? Thank you very much. Can I have, let's do the other group and then we shall break for tea. Very good. Can we give them a round of applause? Thank you very much. The effectiveness of competency-based curriculum adoption and implementation in the region. This was the content. Please reserve your questions. I will have the next group now, and then we shall ask questions jointly. May I now call Catherine? Is Catherine with us? Yes, Catherine, let's put our hands together. Catherine is the head of programs, knowledge, research, and analysis for TGNP, Mtandao wa Jinsia. Karibu, Catherine, over to you. You have 45 minutes, strictly, and then the rest of the time we shall spend on Q&A. And please be reminded, you are in between us and the tea break.
Oh, okay. Good morning. Morning. The energies seem to be low. Why is that? Because it's the third day and we're finishing, yeah? Anyways, let me invite the panelists. I think they're in page 15. Agri, they're from Raising Voices. May I call upon you to come here? And I've been introduced, so I'm just going to introduce myself again while they're coming up here. So my name is Catherine Kasimbazi, and I'm from TGNP. I work in a department called Knowledge, Research, and Analysis.
I will never forget.
So our theme is no violence against children is justifiable, preventing and responding to violence against children. So Agri and we'll be presenting on the theme. And actually, I'm glad because we are all here, because we had a breakout session and we're very few of us, and I think the issues of violence really need a united front. And so us being here together and listening to this is quite a wonderful thing. So may I start with you guys? May you introduce yourself before you start with your presentation?
I will never forget my first day at school. It was one of the most exciting experiences in my life. I always heard my parents talk about taking me to a good school, and I could not wait to join one. Today, I am happy to be talking to you about a good school and how you can create one. I know you care about creating a good school. A good school can mean many things. We often think a school is about giving us knowledge from books so that we can score good marks in tests. But a school can mean much more than that. Here, students learn how to interact with other people. They learn about what is important to them and what they care about. A good school offers opportunities to learners to grow in all these ways. Perhaps you are a teacher or a student, maybe a parent or someone whose responsibility is to make sure our schools serve our children. At Raising Voices, we have been asking these questions for a long time. We talked to many students and teachers, and here is what we have learned. A good school has good teachers, a good learning environment, and a good administration. We all know of teachers who made us feel afraid. Teachers who, as a result, made us feel we are poor learners. Good teachers do not use fear to control learners. They create good relationships so that learners are able to develop self-discipline. They want to see them reach their full potential. Good teachers act as role models, listen to learners, and encourage participation. They also take pride in their school. That is why in the Good Schools Toolkit, we have included a lot of information on what is a good teacher and how to help teachers at your school to become one. By a good learning environment, we mean an environment that is physically and emotionally safe for learning, where the compound is taken care of, classrooms are clean, there are clean latrines for both girls and for boys, a playground, trees, and maybe even a library. A good learning environment is emotionally conducive, where all children are treated fairly, where children have a voice and can contribute their ideas, where children feel safe and are able to learn without fear, where learners feel that they belong to their school and their school belongs to them. That is why in the Good School Toolkit, we have included a lot of information on how to create a good learning environment and how to promote mental health. By a good administration, we mean one where the leadership at school shows by clear examples of actions, words, and deeds that they have high expectations. They promote values such as respect and kindness and uphold high standards of behavior and performance. They promote fairness and encourage everyone to participate in creating a good school, including learners. A good administration develops clear and well-written policies, like school rules and regulations, and ensures that everyone understands and abides by them. That is why in the Good School Toolkit, we have included a lot of information on the role of administration and how to help leaders at your school develop good policies and uphold them. So how will you know if you are at a good school? You are at a good school if teachers are promoting positive discipline, not resorting to violence. Everyone treats each other with respect, where latrines, classrooms, and compounds are clean. Everyone has a voice in how their school is run and can share ideas that can help improve your school. Where there is clear vision for the school championed by the head teacher, you have clear rules and regulations that guide everyone's behavior. So, remember, a good school has good teachers, a good learning environment, and good administration.
Good morning, colleagues. Good morning. How are you feeling? All right. So that was a very good introduction to our presentation. I want to introduce myself. My name is Hassan Mulusi. Usually the Malawians want to think that I'm one of them, but this is Uganda, Mulusi. I work with Raising Voices. Raising Voices, we work to prevent violence against women and children. So we are the authors of the Good School program that you're about to hear about. Thank you very much.
Can I bring you to the podium when you speak, yeah? So at least we feel the vibe.
All right.
Education is vibe. Yes.
Yeah, thank you so much, Mr. Austin. Yeah, my name is Agre Akim. I'm a researcher working with Raising Voices. Currently, I'm the technical manager supporting learning on the Good School Toolkit and generally learning on how to prevent violence against children. Yeah, I'll call upon my colleague Hassan to start us off. Thank you.
Thank you very much. DJ of the slides. All right, as we prepare to receive our slides, I think I have one task to start by doing. One, in a few minutes, to connect this theme to the bigger theme of the quality of education. On the day one, when we were talking to our learners in the room, one of the challenges they mentioned was ukatili jinsia. I think that is gender-based violence. And then in the afternoon, Stella presented and then brought a comparison of a country in war, but immunization is taking place. So I think this presentation would like to connect it to those two, that we are talking about the quality of education in our countries. The quality of education is affected by multiple factors. And I want to say that from day one up to yesterday and many other presentations, we've been discussing about the hardware in terms of providing education. So today we have an opportunity to deal with the software. Even a computer has both the hardware and the software. So this is the only opportunity we have, perhaps, to talk about the software of our interventions. And I also want to mention that we are going to present an intervention that intends to bring the quality of education at scale. So we know that each one of us is doing one thing or the other in many places. But the question is it scale enough to demonstrate the quality we are talking about? If you are doing a small thing in your own house in Shinyanga there, and you think you are contributing to quality, I think that can be a very big question for us to ask. The slides, please. So as the slides come, the presentation is going to be about the Good Schools program, the program that you have been able to see in the opening video. When we talk about the good schools, for us, we are simply being intuitive. We are just telling you that we want to create violence-free schools. And I want to assure you that we cannot have a quality of education when there is violence in the schools. You need to understand what violence will do to the schools. The former president was here telling us we have constructed buildings. We have done A and B and C. But if there is violence in those schools, we should prepare for the following, that our learners are going to learn in fear. Can learning happen when there is fear? I think not. The other thing is that their participation will be limited. Those learners will not be able to come and participate actively if there is violence in their schools. So when we talk about the good schools, we are actually referring to schools that do not tolerate violence. And therefore, we are talking about 4 things. And I want to emphasize this, that relationships are a key in preventing violence and promoting the quality of education we are talking about. In a school, what happens? The learner is establishing a relationship with the teacher. The teacher is establishing the relationship with the school administration. The school administration is establishing a relationship with the community and the parents. The learners and the teachers are establishing a relationship with the school administration. So what type of quality of education are we talking about if we are not caring about the relationships that have to be in the schools? So at Raising Voices, we've developed a model we call the Good Schools program. It is a set of tools that we provide to the teachers. We know when we go to colleges, we are provided with these tools at the school practice. We provide teachers with activities that can be done to involve learners, to involve the parents, to involve the community, and to involve the school administration. These activities are fused within the daily activities that we do. And what we are trying to do here is to change the knowledge, the attitudes, and the capacities of the schools to be able to deliver on education. My dear brothers and sisters, our schools do not need a lot to change and provide us with quality. We just need to provide them with the skills. We just need to provide them with the right attitude. There are many parents whose attitude is that we don't want to educate a girl child. So even if you construct 1,000 classrooms for that parent, I don't think they will take their children there. So the Good Schools program provides activities that the different stakeholders can do. The other objective of this program is that people need to work together. We are in a scenario where the parents do not want to know what is happening in the schools. In Tanzania, you are lucky when you constructed classrooms as parents, and then the government came and roofed. In many other places of Africa, you tell that to a parent, they will say that's your role as government. But the program, the intention is that the parents should know that the school in their midst is an asset. So that's an attitude issue. People look at schools as something distant, the other side, and we are this side. But this is an asset within their community, but they don't know what is happening within that community. The parent brings the learner in the school, they do not follow up to see whether they are actually learning, whether the teachers are motivated. So when we talk about a good school from the video, the summary was that emphasis by governments, by communities, by parents should be put on the teachers. Are your teachers motivated to teach? Are your teachers proud of their job? Are your teachers in good relationships with their learners? I think if we don't answer those questions, however much we strive to create good schools and prevent and contribute to quality education, we might not be doing a lot. The second element that was identified in the video was about the learning environment. I've already told you that if we create these schools, but there is still violence in the schools, our learners will fear to go to them. They will not even enroll. They will not even stay in the school. At the end, the completion rates in our schools is going to be quite low. So you need to really see that violence against children is prevented. And the challenge is with our governments. Do they see this as a real problem? I think there is some data missing. I know that governments understand figures and facts. If you talk about billions and millions and trillions, that's the language they understand. Do we have data that has the economic impact of violence on economy? I think that's the data that our governments will most likely try to understand. So we are saying we need environments in schools that can support learning to happen. But you are bringing your child in a very violent environment. And some of us actually think that good schools are those with storied buildings and things like that. That's an attitude issue. The school has storied buildings, but the teacher is using corporal punishment. Will your child really learn? I think that's a big question that we might not be able to answer. So the model we are bringing also talks about a good administration. Many administrations in our schools are not responsive, and this is the problem. If our learners are learning in fear, the head teacher knows the source of fear. It could be this teacher of mathematics who is beating the learners, but is the best teacher they do have. So the administration will keep quiet about the teacher and say, after all, we don't have any other. But this is a relationship in learning and giving knowledge. So the learners will keep fearing the teacher, but because the administration is not responsive, there will be no policies against corporal punishment. There will be no talks with the teacher. There will be no talks with the learners to understand their problems that affect them. So ladies and gentlemen, we cannot talk about good schools. We cannot talk about the quality of education if we don't rethink the quality and types of schools that we do have. We still have schools that believe in traditional ways of disciplining learners, and we don't think that can still work in the 21st century. We still have schools where parents don't want to come to school. When you invite them, they think you are going to demand school fees. Well, that's a poor attitude. So they say they are going to increase school fees. Maybe they want us to contribute money for food. What's wrong with that if you are contributing to the education of your children? So the model we are talking about has been scaled in 1,400 schools in Uganda. And we thought we could come to be part of this space just to share with you how we can even take such models that have proved effective to scale beyond 10 schools. I don't think 10 schools is enough to demonstrate to the Tanzanian government that this is something we can do. So we have come here with a model, and we want to share with you experience around how we have been able to take it a little bit to scale. And we still continue doing this. We want to continue spreading to as many schools as possible so that the school in Arusha can see the one in Shinyanga and they are equally distributed so that they together can understand the good practices. So ladies and gentlemen, that's the brief about the work we are doing. And now I want to invite Agre to come and talk about one of the models that we have used, which is the regional resource persons. You will ask a question perhaps at the end. How have you been able to reach 1,000 schools? we have used the teachers themselves in their own localities. So we are trying as much as possible to limit things like transport of the teachers from one area to the other. And we have defined the distance they can go. Within 2 kilometers, you can walk to the neighboring school and support them. So that's a model we have come up with, the regional resource persons model. Of course, after hitting a snag, we tried so many models. We started with about 10, but we are very confident in one, which we thought that we can share with you. Agre, may you please come. Thank you.
Thank you so much, my colleague Hassan. Yeah, so like Hassan has mentioned, we really tried as much as possible to see that we reach so many schools in Uganda. Of course, after hitting, so many other obstacles, at first we began with 40 schools that we were supporting directly using our staff at Raising Voices. But later, we thought that this would not be enough to convince others that this model can actually work. So we ended up zeroing on this new way of scaling up programs that we are calling the regional resource persons model, where we are having community activists, like Hassan said, that are living within the communities, who are helping. Let me also try and see if I can. It is helping us to reach the 1,400 schools. And this force of community activists, when we were implementing to improve the knowledge of how to manage classrooms, we know that teachers, yes, they are trained from their teacher training colleges. But sometimes, maybe they forget along the way, or maybe they need a refresher. So this program is really helping them to improve on how to manage classroom discipline. 71% of the school staff agreed that they no longer need to use corporal punishments to be able to discipline their students or their learners while in class, which is really amazing. The GST, or the Good School Toolkit, is also promising when it comes to challenging gender stereotypes in schools. We see 65% of the regional resource persons having, done so much in encouraging participation from both genders, both girls and boys. We see most schools having more girls involved in both the Good School Toolkit leadership as well as the general school leadership. We are seeing more girls becoming head prefects, prefect in charge of education affairs, prefect in charge of health affairs, which wasn't the case before we began implementing this program in these schools. We're also seeing about 40% of the schools having more girls in the general leadership position than how it was before. We see, like I already mentioned, more girls, taking over leadership positions. Before, you would find that many boys or more boys were actually taking up these positions. So which speaks to the fact that the Good School Toolkit is really shifting norms when it comes to gender balance in schools. So what is helping us to reach this milestone, or what is causing this shift? We can say that the RRPs themselves are really perceiving this role in a way that changes, their attitude towards, prevention of violence against children, and this is helping us to come up with such achievements or achieve what we are really seeing in schools. So let me now turn to the data that is coming out of the qualitative studies. We see our RRPs, or the regional resource persons, viewing themselves as change agents. And as you can see, I think we've now been able to project what I really wanted us to project. Yeah, I'm about to finish. They are seeing themselves as change agents, which is really very beautiful. They see themselves as part of, their community, and they're able to, foster change within their own community. They also see themselves as a link between Raising Voices and the community. They actually see themselves as an extension into the community. not just people who have been hired to do this kind of work. So what is motivating the regional resource persons? At the moment, the regional resource persons are telling us that themselves, they have been driven by personal transformation. Some of them used to be perpetrators of violence against children, but at the moment, they no longer see that as important. They no longer see that as necessary. They no longer see corporal punishments as an important tool to help them discipline their own children. So that kind of attitude is really helping us to achieve the results or the goal that we set for the program. But of course, this has come with some challenges that I've already hinted on, some of them being teacher transfers, the frequent teacher transfers. Community mobilization itself is a challenge. But from all this, we are learning that violence prevention is possible, and violence prevention methodologies are actually, it is actually possible for us to scale them to as many schools as possible as we can. As I conclude, I would say that these are insights coming out of the early data that we have just collected. But of course, we are going to keep on learning more about our implementation model, and maybe in future we should be able to come and share with you. Thank you so much for listening to us. I'll now take it back to Catherine for any questions.
Okay. Oh, we're doing questions now. Yeah, they should come.
Okay, so can we have those from the first plenary please come join us on the stage, and Madam Moderator will guide us to taking a couple of questions, maybe 1, 2, 3, 4. If we can do one question per panelist, we'll then be breaking for tea. Madam Moderator, do you allow me to pass the mic?
Yeah. Oh, there wasn't a moderator for.
Good morning. My name is Diana. I'm Technical Specialist Education, Global Community. My first question is going to the first panel. They talking about the competence-based curriculum. And for instance, in Tanzania, most of teachers, they're already trained on that. But my question is about the assessment. Is the assessment in terms of examination are still in content-based or are in competence-based? Thank you.
I will come to you. Very good question. Did you get the question? So we are talking about competence-based curriculum. You got it. Excellent.
Thank you. My name is Azved from Mozambique. We have in Mozambique introduced the competence-based curricula in 2004 at primary schools, and in 2008 we have introduced for secondary schools. A number of challenges we are still having, specifically on the training of the teachers. I just want to find out from the other countries how are they doing on the training teachers, considering that at that time we had a number of teachers who were not trained on this competence-based curriculum. Thank you.
Prof.
Good morning. I'm Dr. Kujege from Zimbabwe. Really appreciated the issue of competence-based curriculum. And I was actually going to ask some of the gentlemen who went out for research, they could also have come to Zimbabwe. Because the actual conception of CBC was in 1999 after a commission, and then it was implemented 2015 to 2022. What I just want to ask is about the assessment criteria. We've got what you call continuous assessment learning activities, which have got two components, that is the formative and the summative, where the formative has got a weighting of 30% and the summative 70%. The major advantage of the two levels of assessment is that even if the learner falls or drops out of school, the learner can still carry the 30% weighting. I just want to find out from your studies whether you got similar conception. Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Dr. Miriam Siwela, teach for Zimbabwe CEO. I just want to say out to all of you in Africa, competence-based curriculum is going to fail for one reason. If we have 250 teachers who went through CBC and yet they are seated at home, why are they seated? Why are we producing with competence-based curriculum people who are merely consumers? They are not producers. Look around this room and the good schools you are talking about. How many are producing what we are seeing right now in this room? Because if you look at China, if you look at Germany, Malaysia, all of them became what they are because they are producers. I hear people saying, oh, we are not getting jobs, we are not getting jobs. Who is supposed to create those jobs? Right now, I went to your market there, Kariako, and majority of those products are being made by school kids from China. So I'm saying this statement very strongly. We as Africans, if we continue to have people who are consumers and we don't encourage our kids, even at primary level, to make products that we are seeing, whether they are in primary, secondary, or tertiary, forget about this CBC.
Totally. Yes. You want to respond? Okay, so let me take these two final hands. I have 3 hands, and then I come to that side for the second round. Is that okay? Moderator, with your permission, 3 hands, and then they respond, and then I go to the other side.
Thank you so much. This is James Chimbia from Malawi. Under the Kwenda Collective. To the first panelist, you mentioned something really interesting about teachers, where you were saying, like in Africa, the teachers are picked from those who perform on average. And I loved that point because the question is, how do you expect a person who was not performing so well in school to become the one who mentors the future generation? So I think this is truly something that can affect the delivery of competence-based education and also the quality of what we deliver. But then you also highlighted something interesting where you said teachers in Africa are not well paid or are not well rewarded, which I think is something that I can relate to back home in Malawi, where the salaries of teachers are not good. And if you look at their housing, very bad. Now, my question is, how do we expect, if we are saying we need to start getting those who do better, like I can call the cream at secondary school, to be the ones who should go for teaching and become teachers? How do we expect such a group to settle for those conditions? What are your recommendations to the government? Thank you.
Two more hands.
Thank you. My name is Mwalimu Nyakirangani. Natoka mkoa wa Morogoro, mwenyekiti wa chama cha walimu Tanzania. Nianze na wawasilishaji wa kwanza au panelisti wa kwanza kuhusiana. Okay. Nianze na panelisti wa kwanza, wamezungumzia swala la kuajiri walimu wengi. Sawa, walimu wengi wapo na wamezalishwa wengi. Leo tunazungumzia zaidi mazingira
ya mwanafunzi namna gani aweze kusoma vizuri. Lakini turudi kwenye hoja ya msingi. Ni nani anayeweza kumtengeneza huyu mwanafunzi akawa mzuri sana? Ni mwalimu. Je, mwalimu huyu ametengenezewa mazingira gani ya kumfanya huyu mwanafunzi awe mzuri? 2, ni nani anayetakiwa kusimamia masilahi ya mwalimu? Lakini mwisho tunaangalia matokeo yakiwa mabaya. Mfano, juzi kwenye ufunguzi ilizungumziwa swala la kuna mtu aligusia kuhusiana na swala la ufaulu wa somo la hesabu na Kiingereza. Je, hawa walimu ni mbinu gani walizofundishwa nzuri zinazoendana na wakati huu wa leo ili aweze kumfaulisha mwanafunzi huyu hesabu vizuri? Na mwisho, mtu anayebebeshwa lawama namba 1 ni mwalimu. Na ukiangalia zile sababu zilizopelekea hesabu kufeli, mwalimu hakuzungumziwa masilahi yake, ila alibebeshwa lawama kwamba yeye ndo chanzo cha mwanafunzi kufeli hesabu. Mwisho, wamezungumzia swala la good school, kwamba good teachers, good environment and a good administration. What kind of good teacher do we need? Huyu mwalimu mzuri anatengenezwaje? Na ni nani? Uzuri wa mwalimu ni kwa sababu masilahi yake yanalindwa. Mwalimu ana uwezo wa kumfundisha mwanafunzi na akafaulu hata chini ya mti. Asante.
In order to produce good students, we have to have good teachers. Who is taking care of the teachers' interests?
Asante sana. My first question goes to both group of panelists. We have addressed a lot of content in regard to competence-based curriculum and good teaching and learning environment in regard to good school. But we literally address, or we merely address the component of mental health. It's one of the key challenges, whether we like it or not. If we really want to have the quality education that we are looking for, that we are desiring for, we want to have qualified and skilled young people, we need to address the issue of mental health within the school environment and outside the school environment. My second question goes to Team Raising Voices. I'm curious to know the teachers who were transferred from the schools that were implementing good school model to other school. Did they replicate what they were doing in the previous school? I'm really curious to know that. Thanks.
Oh. No, it's okay. I think we'll start with the first panelist to be responding to the questions that were raised. Then you'll answer.
Let's proceed. Let's keep our responses very brief because we have another set of questions and we're short of time. Please.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'll try to be very brief. I'm responding to Diana's question about examinations. Content, competence, and examinations. The thing is that we don't have enough synergy. Synergy is an agreement between examinations and curriculum. Curriculum is one thing, examinations become another thing. So we are found in a trick that makes our education look like a dog. You see a dog shaking, and then you ask, is it the dog that works the tail, or the tail that works the dog? Ni mbwa anatikisa mkia au ni mkia unatikisa mbwa? That is what we have. Because you teach competence approach and it's done poorly. And then the questions come as content. At the end, teachers know that it's the examination that counts and not the curriculum. So they teach what they expected to come. And we have so much what we call tuition classes. They just drill them. That is the problem. So we have the problem of synergy, agreement between these institutions, examinations and curriculum. And training on CBC, I don't think we've been able, in the whole of sub-Saharan Africa, we have not been able first to clarify our meaning of competence-based curriculum. Sometimes you find people asking, what is competence-based and what is outcome-based? And then they get confused even when they are professors. What is competence-based? What is outcome-based? You cannot have outcomes that do not suggest competence. And you cannot have competence without outcomes. So we're lost there. We are lost in a sea of meanings. That's why we say, maybe we still have to do a lot of research until today on conceptions. How do we conceive these things? Those who were here this morning, I gave them a change of paradigm from Marxism, from capitalism to Marxism when I was at the university in the 1970s. The revolutionaries asked Nyerere, oh, your socialism is not scientific. So what's going on? Nyerere told us, you are stupid and you are reading Marxism upside down. Because if you brought Karl Marx here to my people who are hunters and gatherers and told them to wait until they become industrialists to become socialists, he would write a different Das Kapital. Marx would not write the book that he had written. So sit down, you're stupid, and your professors are confused. Go nasoma chuo kikuu cha East Africa. That time we didn't have University of Dar es Salaam yet. So, conceptions, how do we understand these things? And this guy from Zimbabwe asks about summative and formative. The question is, what are you forming and what are you summing up? That's the basic question. Are you teaching content or are you developing competence? Content is supposed to be the slave or the raw material for competence. But if you look at your exams seriously, you find that they are still on the side of content accumulation. Rather than change your person, rather than developing a person who is self-reliant. And we are asking our examination councils, do they know how to assess character? Character of thinking and reflecting. Do they do that? We have a lot of weaknesses in these concepts. Oh, I'm going back again to Kiswahili. When I get emotional, my English collapses. And then somebody was talking about consumers and producers. Competence-based curriculum has to make producers. That is why it is based on application. We have to develop applied competence. People who can innovate. People who can create and innovate. That's why we go to China to buy things. We become a dumping place for Chinese goods because their education has changed and transformed very much. We have to study clearly what we mean by competence-based curriculum. We have not clarified our meanings yet. Thank you.
Do you want, before you sit down, to clarify that meaning, please? Can you clarify that meaning? Because this is exactly why she asked. Why are we becoming the dumping continent for Chinese products? Why are we consumers and not producers? You've not, I don't think if you've done justice to that response. Please.
We have done that because our education is still based on cramming facts which are not even facts.
What should be done?
What should be done is to create a reflective system where children get into classroom and then they face their environment and decide what the problem is, and then try to do a lot of observation. And once they've done their observation, then they conceptualize on what they have observed. And then finally, they experiment on solutions to what is happening around them. So when they go to experiment on solutions, then they can produce. But for us, we're still cramming.
So from the lesson that the presentation that Maboko did on day one, do you think Tanzania is on the right route?
We're 2 steps on the journey.
Behind or forward?
No. 2 steps on the journey forward. Yeah.
All right, thank you so much. Let's get another response from group 1.
We wanted to add something.
Yes, please, if you may stand up.
Yeah, just one or 2 things that my colleagues Ainea has actually. So Mozambique, you talked about challenges of teachers being not trained. The research actually discovered that in all the countries, the 4 countries, teachers have not been trained. Then Daktari from Zimbabwe, formative assessment, particularly here in Tanzania. I think in Form 2, there's some national exam. Now, but when we ask questions, the percentage of that grade on the final grade at Form 4, the question was not very clear. So people did not tell us whether the grade in Form 4, in Form 2, is 30%, and the grade at the final Form 4 is 70%. So that one probably somebody's in the ministry here or can tell us. But in Kenya, the CBC, the continuous assessment will be 30%, and the final exam is 70%.
I'm not sure if you're responding to the question that was asked by a lady. How do we examine CBC?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying. Assessment of CBC is a bit different from the assessment of the content-based curriculum, because if it's well implemented, we must have a way of assessing the practical aspects of the curriculum. And as you're aware, in Tanzania here, which CBC has been implemented since 2005, people are still grappling with how to assess the practical aspects of CBC.
Any best practices you can share?
I think I was relying on what had happened in Tanzania.
In Tanzania. So we have people from Tanzania who will respond to that?
Who should respond probably from the ministry, how they are assessing the practical aspects and which percentage. Because Kenya, we have just done the first cycle of 3 years, and they did the first exam, and it had controversies because we were used to having results put in the newspapers, and we see the student who has become number 1 and the student who has become number 2, and the school which is best. But when that exam came, they said that all the students had passed. And since the policy is that they move from junior school, primary school, junior, secondary, everybody moved. So assessment is still a gray area. I want to confess that I don't have clear answers there. Now, the Teach for Zimbabwe colleague, I still confess that you cannot train teachers and expect them to employ themselves. But I agree with you that we must find a way of making people who come from colleges or our schools be able to produce something, to survive. And I think my colleague philosophically gave philosophical standpoints, but I think we must go beyond philosophy now. what is a primary school student supposed to do? In China, I'm told in primary schools, they put some of these watches that we buy together in primary. Some of they are the ones who make them. They are given that and then they do. We have abandoned our children and then we begin blaming them. I cannot agree that we blame the students. We must blame ourselves, the teachers. Sometimes not really even the teachers themselves. They are trained and they are not employed. So somebody must take responsibility. But we cannot say our students have failed to help themselves if we did not teach them how to survive.
Okay.
So that we have to work on. We have to work on that because we are producing many children and we are destroying them literally. So I think it's a good conversation and this forum should be able to make a recommendation. Now, I give you the example of Kenya.
If you can make it brief, because
Yes,
we have another
yes,
set.
I just want
and
to
we are
give an example from Kenya. Nowadays, the government takes, before the previous government used to take 3,000 students for internship into different ministries. The new government has improved it to 8,000 per year. Now, each year we graduate at 1 million students. Now, get the percentage. Take 8,000 out of 1 million times 100 and tell me the percentage of those that are taken. This committee, this meeting should make a recommendation which should be circulated to the East African countries that when you take the students on internship, employ them, all of them. Where do you want them to go? My daughter was part of the people who went for internship in ministries and say there was a lot of work, making tea, passing files. Then where did the jobs disappear to when she was told that the 1 year is over, now go and find a job for yourself? This meeting must recommend that the number of those students on internship should increase to 70%, and they should remain there after the internship period is over.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Yes, you're moderator, and then you pass it on to
Yes,
Christine.
thank you very much. There are questions about the challenge with regard to working conditions of teachers and living conditions of teachers.
If you can put the mic closer,
the
yes.
answer, yes. Who should be responsible? What do we recommend? I think that it should come from the floor. It's about poor working conditions of teachers and poor living conditions of teachers. As the teachers' unions, we address the issue of decent employment. When you talk about decent employment, for improvement, it means making teachers have conducive living conditions and working conditions. And it's the responsibility of the government, that's obvious, the employer. But now, we, the teachers' unions, should be the ones actually to advocate for improving decent employment of teachers, decent work of teachers, alongside with decent working conditions in schools, where, of course, the learners are also part of the challenges when it comes to poor working conditions. And Nyakirangani, kutoka Morogoro, mwenyekiti, nilikuwa mwenyekiti pale zamani Nyakirangani. Umeuliza, nani, unasema walimu wako wengi. You are saying there are so many teachers employed. It means in Morogoro you don't have this problem, shortage of teachers. Congratulations. But then you are saying, nani anaweza kumtengeneza mwanafunzi awe mzuri? Who is responsible for making a good learner? Hey, the employer on one part, the community, the parents, the surrounding community on the other part, the teachers on the other part. So it's something that needs really combined efforts. And then you are saying, nani angeweza kutengeneza mwanafunzi? I think I've responded to that. But you have emphasized about the question of poor enumeration. poor living conditions. And this is a question again that teachers' unions should keep pressurizing the government to improve the living and the working conditions, improving remuneration, but that is not enough. Other issues like housing must be part of what we have to advocate for improvement.
Thank you very much, sir. Christine, over to you. Sir, you've made me think of a line, what belongs to everybody belongs to nobody. I'm not sure now if we really want to get to the bottom of this issue. Because when you talk of parents, community, and everybody, that simply says what belongs to everybody belongs to nobody. Christine, over to you. If there are any questions your side, before I pick questions from this side.
Well, it's Catherine, and before we actually move to me, maybe we should respond to the question that was directed to the second panelist. Group of panelists, please.
Thank you very much. There were two questions, one on mental health and the other on transferred teachers. There is a very strong relationship between the quality of education, violence, and mental health. So we think that interventions in schools should try to integrate the three. As to what causes the other, that's the egg and chicken. But at Raising Voices, I think this is a question we are almost answering completely. We are currently in the third adaptation of the Good School Toolkit. And one of the big questions was to establish the relationship between violence and mental health. So we are piloting a mental health module. It will be ready for consumption in June.
Thank you.
About the transferred teachers, this is a problem we suffered for several years, and we have worked around it. When we are taking the intervention in schools, we make sure that all teachers are brought on board. So even if one teacher got transferred, the effect is already catered for. But we have also worked with local governments and the government that wherever this teacher goes, we are teaching public children. So they go with the ideas. And one of the big challenges we face is actually that they transfer themselves with the materials. So that is the new school that will come to you. We want the intervention, but where they are coming from, they are saying our materials were taken. Thank you.
Before you take a seat, what is the coverage in your country? How many schools have you been able to cover in percentage-wise?
Out of the 39 primary schools and 5,000 secondary schools, we are in 1,400. 500 secondary and 900 primary.
Okay.
The journey continues.
Thank you so much. So let's take these four final
just a
hands.
follow-up question. Sorry, Austin.
Yes, dear.
I'm just wondering, are these schools located in the urban areas or as well as the rural areas?
Brief, just say rural or urban, that's it. Or both?
Both.
Thank you. Okay.
Keep your question. So we take 5 final hands. Thank you so much. My first question goes to panel number 2. As you were presenting on the model you adapted, I didn't see something to do with the learners' engagement in your model. Maybe you tell us. But the second one is, it's not a question, it's a contribution. I'm a civil society practitioner, but talking about the curriculum animal, the so-called curriculum, the CBC now we are talking about. In Tanzania, somebody from Kenya talked about Kenya. In Tanzania, almost we are facing the same problem. The challenge is intentionally, the intended curriculum is fine. The taught, fine. The challenge comes how it is assessed. Now, we as Africans, I think we share the same challenges, politicizing education. How are we going to recommend on how our government should stop politicizing? For example, we 10 MET, we use it to, to go, to make follow-up, apart from other different follow-ups, but we use it to follow up on the regions which could perform in a low marks in a Form 4, Form 2, and the Form 2. Then we go there in a big bang, we do the advocacy and all that. Now, after seeing that, okay, 10 MET is on our neck, they stopped, grading those grades in such a way. Now recently, Tanzanians, you can prove me right or wrong, we have witnessed something also. They're trying to hide who has performed how, and so that is politics, guys. How are we going to do something so that we stop politicizing education in Africa?
Asante, keep it short. Let's keep it short so we all have the opportunity.
Good morning. My question is to the second panel as well. As we're discussing violence in schools, I really wish to understand, and maybe you can share your best practices, how are you addressing violence when it comes to emotional violence? And I like what Martha also just started implying around mental abuse. Because I feel some of it could be cultural. There's some things that we could be abusing kids, and we're doing it very subtly because we think it's normal for us to behave this way, to say certain things. So I'm really curious to know how we're addressing that. And just to put it in perspective, last week we've seen the results of grade 7 in Tanzania for the national examinations. And about 440,000 kids did not graduate in grade 7. So we had 1.8 million kids starting grade 1 in 2017. 2023, those who actually sat for the exams were 1.3 million kids. So 440,000 were lost somewhere along the way in those 7 years. But if I look at the data in Tanzania, the highest dropout rate happens in grade 3 and 4. And what happens there is that by grade 3 and 4, we are asking kids to start reading by themselves. So this is where the issues around dyslexia, the reading challenges, can actually start to come out. But I work in the secondary space. I talk to teachers, and I would ask a teacher, do you know dyslexia? It's the first time they're hearing it. So sometimes we could be thinking a child is just stupid. We could call them names, but really we're just worsening that problem. We're stigmatizing them, and we're causing more and more of this issue. So I've been trying to look at the reasons of the dropout rates, especially for primary. And unfortunately, early childhood marriage is the least of the problems for dropout rates. And the highest is just quoted as they just abscond. But I don't believe kids just abscond school. So there is a problem there, and I don't know how we can address it, and I'm really hoping to hear that how you're creating this awareness, especially amongst teachers and parents, to be able to address violence in schools.
Asante, Iku.
Yeah, thank you so much. I'm Marlon Piri from Zambia. Yeah, how do we know that you know what you know? Or what people say you know? If you can't articulate what you know, the products that you produce cannot speak of what you know. I mean the quality of those products. Someone said recently that when systems fail, we fail the learner. Thank you.
And I know you know we do not know the answer to that.
Thank you very much. My name's Rukao Benson. I am from Rwanda, the National Coordinator for Rwanda Education for All Coalition. I just want to come up with a recommendation for us to better implement the CBC. I think with our governments or the countries should make sure that they distribute enough materials and also make sure it is enough materials and learning in schools. So also to make sure that there are guidelines. Guidelines also to make sure that the inclusive curriculum is well implemented. The other thing is we have the best practice. Currently, we have what we call Rwanda IQEC. This is a program that is initiated in lower primary. There are 3 years. So the program is ICT based. So this one is where teachers, all teachers, in about 250 schools as the first pilot phase. They are teaching at the same time using the tablets, so with the same program. So this is to make sure that all teachers are implementing the curriculum as planned. Oh, yes, I'm winding up. Also, yes, like Doc said, this will support to contribute to the sustainable growth eventually of the country. Thank you.
Tea time, and I'm failing you in terms of keeping time. I want us to finish this session so we can go for tea, do the final plenary, and as we wait for the guest of honor, I want to open the floor for any burning issues. What do you say? Do we all agree? We break for tea now? I'm only hearing two voices. Do we all agree? Yes. Okay, so let's take two final hands. Madam here and this young lady, I believe young lady here, and then that will be it. You wrap up.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm Suliat Idris from Nigeria, and my question is to the CBC presenters. I love the fact that he acknowledged the fact that we have shortage of teachers in Africa. But I'm wondering, why is it that teachers are the bargain at the World Bank for what should go up in terms of what Africa can employ, knowing fully that our population will continue to expand and we'll be needing more teachers to educate these children as we give birth to them. So is it a deliberate action to keep us where we are, knowing education is the biggest asset you could give to development of nations, especially developing nations? So my question, right, is who should the call to action be directed to for to employ the teachers that Africa needs to expand the knowledge bank of its younger people? Thank you.
Thank you so much. So the lady left, so you have the chance because you're seated on the same table. Please hurry up.
Thank you. My name is Edgar Bukuku from Dar es Salaam, Tanzania. I am a student of Dar es Salaam University College of Education. And this is my question. It can be a recommendation to you. My question is, how do you collaborate and deal with the universities when it comes to competency-based curriculum? Because university produces teacher to teach at secondary and primary school. But when it comes to curriculum review, the university in different words, secondary and colleges are in different words. That's why you may find that universities produce teachers without communication skills, without soft skills, without digital skills, without entrepreneurial skills. So how can you collaborate with universities in order to produce this teacher who can fit in this competence-based curriculum?
Over to you. Let's keep our answers very brief so that we can break for tea.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I'll answer the question from here so that we don't waste a lot of time. So I'm going to speak to the question on how we are engaging learners in the Good School Toolkit or the Good School Program. I would say that the Good School Program is a whole school approach, so we involve everybody, every stakeholder. That is to say that we involve all teachers, parents, and learners. And this is done through the committees. The program thrives on the three committees: the Learners Committee, the Teachers Committee, and the Parents Committee. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much. And the question on addressing emotional violence, Mr. Moderator, I will need 1 full minute to deal with this. One, emotional violence, I've already mentioned that mental health is one of the interventions we are bringing on board. And then I want to sound a warning. We normally quite talk about this in relation to schools. Mental health is a medical condition. And we don't want to assume that as schools we have the capacity to deal with mental health. So what are we taking to schools in terms of mental health? As Raising Voices, we think we can do 3 things. One, we just need to provide basic language to the people how to describe the conditions they are dealing with. And then we need to destigmatize that it's not such an end on its own, but also we need to give basic skills to the teachers to be able to identify. Otherwise, if we think we are medical personnel in the schools, then we are going to exacerbate the problem. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Can you get?
Yeah, I'll answer the question on politicization of education, and then about university, very briefly. Politicians don't make the curriculum, and politicians don't actually teach. And they don't bring the examinations, but they put pressure on all these. And as I said, curriculum, teaching, and examination are not synergized. They are not aligned very clearly to work together to produce what we want to produce. This is a problem of a mindset. We went to school in those days of content accumulation. We have not yet shifted. Our members of parliament, if you ask them, they have degrees and PhDs. But if you ask them, what can you do with your PhD? He doesn't know. He has a certificate, a diploma hanging there. So it's a long journey of changing attitude and also building consciousness. And when it comes to examinations, you find that we don't even have rubrics. We don't have rubrics that tell us that when you do this, we can see this. When you do this, we can see this. They just collect marks, and summative and formative. But what do you what do you form and what do you sum up? When you look at it, it's just quantitative. There's no qualitative. Yeah, they don't tell us what kind. The one who passed the examinations has this kind of character, social character, that is productive. Luce says, how do you collaborate with universities? The university is an ivory tower. It lives up there in the skies. It doesn't touch the grounds. Our professors are floating up there. And if you tell a professor to teach in a primary school, I think he'll shoot you because he's not supposed to go down there. And when our teachers were asked to move from secondary to primary school, some of them resigned because primary school is too low. We still have these problems of conceiving what is education. People have a PhD in education, but you ask him, what does education mean to you? He doesn't even know. This is a big problem with our African people. You go to Finland, the best people at the university are taken to teach primary school. Yes. But for us here, it's a secondary school failure who is taught how to teach in a primary school. How do you get good doctors? How do you get good engineers? How do you get, because they are crippled at a baby level. When they are adults, oh, incurable. So we still have to work very hard on changing attitude that the university teacher who will produce people to teach at the college level, teacher college, does not know competence because they don't teach it up there. And then they don't teach the competence level. They whatever they teach, they know themselves. And then when he comes to school is when he learns how to teach in a school. So we have problems of synergy, alignment, and this will take us a very long time. Only that we now have structures like a curricula and whatever. That's why I said we have taken the first step, or maybe the second step, but we're not yet there. Thank you very much.
I'll give you 1 minute each. The moderators to wrap. I'm not sure. Were any questions directed to you? He did not have any question.
Yeah?
Did you have any question?
No, it's not a question, just to add, answer.
The World Bank issue. Okay, then I'll give you 1 minute each to wrap up, and then we close this session.
Thank you very much. I think my colleague from Nigeria, you asked, who should we hold accountable to employ the teachers? It's the governments. As I said, there's nobody else. You can't train people and you don't employ them. So that one is that. I wanted to clarify, I worked at the Curriculum Development Center. In the Curriculum Development Center in Kenya, subjects have representation from the universities. But the problem is, if the universities themselves, as my colleague has said, do not know what is good for the country, then their participation in curriculum development cannot fundamentally change the education that we are looking for. Thank you.
Thank you so much for those responses.
1 minute to wrap up.
Yes. Now that we have all heard all this, the presentations, but also the questions with responses, I would like to ask one question to all of us. I've said that the study was a desk one, desk research, and you all know what it means. If you had to recommend to FAIR to conduct a field study, what other issues would you have liked to hear about when the report comes out? Food for thought, but I would appreciate to get your responses here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Catherine?
Since they've already given the wrapping statement, maybe we get a wrapping statement from the second panelist. But then I also had a question myself. Are you allowing me to ask a question also?
No, I'm not.
Okay then.
Yes.
Panel number 2, can you wrap up for us? What are you giving as a takeaway to the audience?
Yeah, mine is actually like a question. I'm saying that, yes, you are thinking about quality education, but let's go a little bit down and think about the learners' experiences. How are they experiencing schools? Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And my last one is, if we want to improve the quality of education, we need a very strong foundation for it to thrive. If you need to create that strong foundation, you must prevent violence against children in our schools. And if you want to prevent violence against children, you have to make good choices around the types of relationships you want. We have a menu of choices. Many of us have chosen violence. Would you think otherwise? Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. And to you now, you can either ask your question or can just give us your parting word.
Well, it was actually a question. I was hoping for a much more debated contribution around the second panelist about violence. But what I just want to say is that with violence against children, I think we should not generalize it in a way, because there are different forms of, violence, and with the different form of them, I think it's important to actually name the kind of violence so that we know how to come up with an innovative way of readdressing it. So my question now was to you guys that do you point out, because I know you've mentioned corporal punishment as one. I understand there are other forms of violence that happen in school. Sexual abuse also happens in school. I think that's one of the rampant, kind of violence that actually happen in Tanzania. So is it the case in Uganda? And in a case where it actually happens, I understand you deal with prevention and stuff, but when it actually happens, what is the response, the collaboration? Because it needs a collaborative effort. What's the response? I mean, what's the collaboration you get from the legal system? Because that's where the biggest challenge is, at least in my country.
Food for thought. I believe that is, Catherine, if you allow me, may I now request you to please stand up?
Yep.
As we clap for them, let's put our hands together. Asante Sana, please come together on the center stage. Let's put the lady in the middle. And where are the claps? Thank you very much for sharing your insights, for sharing your wisdom. I would reiterate the words that His Excellency Jakaya Kikwete said on day one, that there's still one cameraman running very fast as he can, that there's still a lot to be done. I think this is my key takeaway. Without further ado, let's break for tea for 20 minutes. Tea is served and tea is ready. Let's come back in 20 minutes. You have a hand? Do you want to ask a question or you want to pray for tea? Yes. You're allowed as people are getting up. All eyes are on you. Just ask you up. Just as we get up, and please proceed for tea.
Thank you. My name is Respect Chano from Zimbabwe. We are currently running a social media campaign on SDG 4 under the GEAR Alliance, which is being funded by JPE under the EOL project. So I'm kindly asking any organization that is willing to participate in our social media campaign. I will be recording short clips privately out there so that we can post them on our social media campaign and our social media pages, and we will be cross-posting to your pages that if you are willing. We are driving towards the same agenda. So I will be grateful if you kindly participate in that. Thank you.
So 20 minutes break, 20 video clips. All the best. Let's go, let's go. We